Hi, my name's Alister Chapman, and in this video I'm going to take a look at a number of items from Zacuto in the USA. Now, the main thing that I wanted to take a look at from Zacuto was the Gratical viewfinder. I'd heard a lot of good things about this viewfinder, so I wanted to see for myself. But as part of the package, when they sent me the viewfinder to review, they also sent me this thing here called a ZDrive and one of their camera bases, but we'll look at those later on in the video. So the Zacuto Gratical, what's that all about? Well, it's a replacement viewfinder to use instead of or in addition to the viewfinder that maybe your camera already comes with. So this is a Sony FS7, and the FS7 comes from the factory from Sony with actually quite a good viewfinder. It's not bad at all. But it's not the best viewfinder in the world. So a lot of people I know have been using the FS7 with this, so I decided to take a look. And frankly, this is probably the best viewfinder that I've ever used. And that's no word of a lie. This really is a quite remarkably good little viewfinder. Now, it is fairly expensive. It's about $3,000, something like that. And for a third-party viewfinder in today's current market, that's at the high end. You can get viewfinders for half that price. But in terms of specifications and what you can do, it is up there with the best of the best. Not only can it operate as a viewfinder, but it can also do things like adding lookup tables to the video that's looped through the viewfinder. So you can actually apply a lookup table to the output. So you can actually feed HDSDI or HDMI into the viewfinder. That could be S-Log or Log-C. And then out of the viewfinder, the signal that comes out of the viewfinder can have a lookup table applied to it. That's a particularly useful function with this camera, Sony's FS7, and also Sony's F5 and F55. Because if you're shooting in slow motion using the S and Q motion mode of these cameras, the LUT options are very, very restricted. Basically, you can only have a LUT on for everything, including the internal recording, which often isn't what you want. You want to have S-Log2, S-Log3 recording. But if you use the Gratical, you can take that S-Log out of the camera into the viewfinder, apply the LUT in the viewfinder, both so you can see the LUTted image in the viewfinder, but also on your HDMI and HDSDI outputs, so that the producer, the director, everyone else on set can also see the LUTted image. And that really is a very useful feature to have. So what is it that I really like about this viewfinder? Why do I think it's so good? Well, the first thing is the image quality. As soon as you turn it on, connect it to the camera, and you look at the quality of the image, straight away you can see you're going to enjoy using the viewfinder. It's an OLED display, so it's very high contrast. The blacks are truly blacks. And unlike a lot of OLEDs I've used, it's actually still very bright. Some OLED viewfinders can be a little on the dim side, but no problems with this one. Nice, bright, very high contrast, very sharp, very high resolution image. In fact, it's one of the first viewfinders where I've actually felt that I've been able to turn off the peaking and not really compromising my ability to focus. The image is that sharp. Here we have it with the camera's overlays turned off, so they're not getting in the way anymore. And you can see that focusing is very clear. Now, if you are shooting 4K, it is worth remembering that the resolution of this viewfinder isn't 4K, it's around about 1280 HD. So you're not going to see that last critical bit of focus that you get with a 4K camera. But not to worry, it does have a 1:1 pixel function, so it can zoom into a full HD image, 1920 1080 HD image at pixel for pixel. And then on top of that, you have the usual peaking controls and peaking options to really help you get the very best focus. One of the nice things about the 1:1 pixel zoom is that when you use it, you can use the joystick to actually move the image around, so you can see different parts of the image. You're not stuck to just the very center of the frame. Now, one thing that they've done with this viewfinder that I think is very clever is they've used a 4:3 OLED display. Now, most people now are shooting in HD, 4K or 2K, and that's a widescreen 17:9 or 16:9 image. What it means is because you've got a 4:3 screen in this viewfinder, you can display a 16:9 image across either the center or the top of the viewfinder. And if it's displayed across the top of the viewfinder, which is the default setting, below it you can have your waveform, histogram and vector scope displayed completely separate to the video signal. So they're not obstructing it, they're not getting in your way. And that's a wonderful way to be able to check your exposure while you're shooting without covering up a corner of the image or something like that, as most viewfinders do. And that's a really neat trick. Another feature of the Gratical is anamorphic de-squeeze. So we can go into the menu and we can select various amounts of anamorphic de-squeeze. So if we're shooting with an anamorphic lens or an anamorphic adapter, we can display the viewfinder image with the correct aspect ratio. You have 4 assignable buttons on the side of the viewfinder here that you can assign various functions to, but there is also a joystick here that has multiple functions when you're not using it to navigate through the menus. For example, pushing it to the right turns the peaking on and off, so you have an extra set of assignable functions on this little joystick here. In terms of power, it runs off a standard and readily available Canon battery, or you can get adapters to run it directly off a DTAP or a high-res output from your camera. You have an HD SDI input and an HDMI input, as well as HDMI and HD SDI out. The Gratical can also convert, so you could go in SDI and come out HDMI, or in HDMI and out SDI, as well as of course being able to loop through from SDI to SDI. And then one of the nice things that we can do when we're looping through this viewfinder, however we do it, is we can add lookup tables on the output so that we can have a lookup table applied to an additional monitor or extra monitors on set. Now if you're shooting in the Cine EI mode with an FS7, F5, F55 and you're using the Zacuto Gratical as your viewfinder and applying the LUTs in the viewfinder, to be able to use the EI mode correctly, what you do need to do is in the camera's LUT menu is to set the output LUT to the same type of log curve as you're shooting. So if you're shooting S-log2, you set your LUT to S-log2. If you're shooting S-log3, you set your LUT to S-log3. That way, the output of the camera will get brighter and darker as you change the EI, and then the Zacuto Gratical will apply the LUT on top of that EI adjusted footage, so your EI mode will still operate correctly. But here you do have a small problem when you come to S&Q motion, because when you go into S&Q motion, of course, there are no LUTs in the camera. So in that particular case, what you might want to do is to use something like LUT Calc to create LUTs that have a plus or minus 1 or 2 stop exposure offset. So you can make the image in the viewfinder brighter or darker by using an offset LUT. But that's much more advanced stuff. I wouldn't worry about that too much unless you're getting to very advanced shooting in high speed and slow motion and things like that. The mechanical construction of the Gratical really is very nice. It feels really solid in your hand. No loose floppy plasticky bits that feel like they're going to drop off. The optics are very, very good, very sharp, very clear. I couldn't really see any noticeable distortions or aberrations that were going to detract from using this as a viewfinder. And it even comes with anti-fog inserts that prevent it misting up in humid and damp weather. The viewfinder has a standard ARRI rosette on the back of it for mounting it to your camera. Here we have the Axis Mini mount from Zacuto, which slides forwards and backwards very smoothly and allows you to rotate the viewfinder and twist it very easily, very simply. And it's a really quite a nice mounting system as well. So looking at some of the other things that I've received from Zacuto for review, well, let's have a look at this really strange looking thing here. Now this is called a ZDrive. I guess you can kind of see it's almost a Z shape, and it's a follow focus, but it's a very different follow focus. So we have our gear driving the motor here and our follow focus knob here, but it's at an angle from the lens. And there is this weird thing on the end here that's called a tornado. Now what's so special about this? Well, not only is it a follow focus, but it's also a hand grip. This actually supports the camera. So you can actually use this follow focus as a hand grip to hold the camera. The tornado part here stays still as you're turning your follow focus, or you can move the whole thing as well. So it gives you an additional way to support and hold the camera, as well as giving you a follow focus function at the same time. And this works particularly well actually on the FS7 when you're using the FS7's hand grip. So you have your hand grip in your right hand, you have the ZDrive in your left, and you can do the zoom control if you have the power zoom lens on the camera with your right hand and focus with your left, and still support and hold the camera very securely. There's very, very minimal play in the follow focus system. It's really nicely made, well constructed. The only thing I would say is it is a little bit on the heavy side, and it is putting quite a lot of extra weight out at the very front of the camera where you don't really want it. This camera tends to be very front heavy. So really nice little accessory, quite a unique thing. I've not seen anything like it from anybody else. I really do like it. Just be aware that it will add a fair bit of weight to the front of your camera. Now also, here we have this Zacuto baseplate. This is their VCT universal baseplate, and in many respects it's similar to other VCT plates on the market. One of the nice things about this one is that the base itself is completely flat, so you can slide the camera forwards and backwards on the base to help get your balance exactly right. And the foot of the base, this snaps into a standard VCT base, has been positioned forwards of the base, and this, especially with a camera like the FS7, maybe F5 as well, really does help you get that center of gravity under the middle of the camera when you're using a VCT plate. Again, like the ZDrive though, it is quite heavy, so when you start adding all of this extra stuff onto your camera, it is going to increase the weight of the camera quite a bit. Nicely made, well constructed, good, solid, nice big adjusters here that you can grip with, even with gloves on. On some mounts they're a little bit small, a little bit fiddly, but these are nice and big. But that does come with the penalty of big, because it's bigger, because it's a little bit bulkier, it is also a little bit heavier.